I want you to think for a moment about the times in your life when you've seen a blessing unfold, when doors were opened that you didn't expect, when things started aligning in a way that only God could orchestrate. But let me ask you something. How did you handle it? How did you respond when God opened up the heavens and poured out his favor upon you? Too often we get excited about the breakthrough and want to shout it from the rooftops, share it with everyone around us, and prove to the world that we've made it. But what if I told you that sometimes the best response to God's blessing isn't loud celebration, it's quiet reflection? What if the blessing you've been waiting for is so precious that you need to guard it with silence? I know it's hard, especially when you're on top of the mountain. But I'm here to remind you today that when God blesses you, your mouth can be your biggest enemy. Your words can either protect your blessing or cause it to slip through your fingers. God's blessings require wisdom, and sometimes that wisdom is in keeping quiet, trusting his timing, and letting his plan unfold in his perfect way. In a world that's constantly talking, constantly moving, constantly seeking attention, there is a profound power in silence. We live in a culture that celebrates noise, the loud opinions, the constant chatter, the social media updates, the endless notifications. But the truth is, some of the most significant and powerful moments in life happen in silence. When you're going through a season of blessing, one of the most valuable lessons you can learn is the power of silence. God is a God of stillness and calm. His voice doesn't always come in a loud, thunderous roar. More often than not, he speaks in a quiet whisper, a subtle nudge in your spirit. If you're always talking, you may miss the very instruction or direction he's giving you. There's a reason why in the Bible we're told to be still and know that I am God. Being still isn't just about being physically quiet. It's about quieting your soul, shutting out the noise around you, and focusing on what God is trying to say. When God blesses you, he's doing something that is sacred, something that needs to be protected. Silence is the guardian of your blessing. When the blessing comes, it often arrives in the form of a quiet miracle, a subtle shift, a small breakthrough. The enemy knows that if he can get you to start talking prematurely, you will expose your blessing to the wrong people at the wrong time. Silence is the shield that allows you to enjoy the fruit of your labor without unnecessary interference. It's the protection that guards your heart and your destiny. In the silence, God works. It is in the quiet moments that God prepares you for the next phase of your journey. We tend to think that when we get blessed, everyone should know about it right away. But some things are too precious to reveal too soon. Some of God's greatest blessings are meant to be shared only when the time is right. Your words have power. They can either create a breakthrough or block the blessing. By staying silent, you avoid the danger of saying things you might later regret, things that could sabotage the work God is doing in your life. Moreover, silence gives you the space to reflect on what God is doing in your life. It allows you to gain clarity, to understand the weight of the blessing, and to recognize the responsibility that comes with it. In those quiet moments, you can seek wisdom from God, asking him for direction on how to handle what he has given you. Silence is not just a passive act, it is an act of choice to tune into God's voice, to discern his guidance, and to wait on his perfect timing. In a season of blessing, silence is more than just holding your tongue. It's a way of showing God that you trust him completely. You trust that he knows when and how to reveal his work in your life. You trust that he will unfold your blessings at the right time. Silence is your declaration of faith that you believe in his timing, his plan, and his will, even if you don't fully understand it yet. The act of holding your peace is an expression of surrender to the divine process that God has set in motion in your life. When we talk about blessings, we often think of them as gifts that are simply handed over when we ask for them. But in reality, God's blessings are never just about the right request, they're about the right timing. Timing is everything. We live in a world that craves instant gratification where everything is available at the touch of a button. We've been conditioned to expect immediate results to get what we want when we want it. But God does not operate on human time. He operates on a divine, perfect timeline that is beyond our understanding. In God's eyes, timing is sacred because it is tied to a greater purpose. The blessing you're waiting for isn't just about you. It's part of a larger plan that God has already set into motion. He knows exactly when you're ready for the blessing. And he knows exactly when the world is ready for you to step into your purpose. The right blessing at the wrong time can be disastrous. Imagine being given something before you're prepared to handle it. The weight of that blessing could crush you. God, in his infinite wisdom, knows exactly when to bring you into a season of blessing. It's not just about your preparedness, but about the right set of circumstances aligning in the world around you. Think about the story of Joseph. His dreams were given to him at a young age, but the timing for those dreams to come true wasn't immediate. Joseph had to go through betrayal, imprisonment, and trials before the blessing of his dream was realized. It wasn't that God had forgotten him. It was that Joseph needed to go through certain experiences to shape him, to prepare him, and to refine his character. If Joseph had been placed in a position of power before he was tested, he might have let pride consume him. Instead, the timing of his blessing allowed him to step into the role with humility, wisdom, and the right heart. God's timing protects you from unnecessary hurt. If he gave you everything you wanted at the moment you wanted it, it would often lead to unnecessary complications. Blessings that are rushed can become burdens, and blessings that are delayed can build strength. While you're waiting, God is refining your character, shaping your faith, and preparing you for what's next. He's working behind the scenes, orchestrating circumstances and aligning people to make sure that when the time is right, your blessing will be everything you need it to be and more. The issue is we often don't understand this divine timing. We see others around us receiving blessings, and we wonder why our own prayers seem unanswered. We question God's plan and become impatient with the process. But here's the truth. God's timing is perfect, and it is always on time. He doesn't operate on your schedule. He doesn't run by your clock. His timing is never late. It's always right. There's a lesson in every waiting season. There's something in the waiting that develops your faith, your trust, and your reliance on him. When we rush God's timing, we risk stepping outside of his will. God's blessings aren't just about receiving. They are about receiving at the right time. When you get a blessing outside of God's perfect timing, it becomes a burden rather than a blessing. And just as God's blessings are connected to his divine purpose, so too is his timing connected to his perfect plan. You might be in a season of waiting right now, and it might feel like nothing is happening. But know this God is working, even when you can't see it. He's preparing the path, adjusting your environment, and creating the perfect opportunity for you to receive your blessing in a way that aligns with his will. God doesn't just bless you to bless you. He blesses you to build you, to shape you, and to prepare you for the impact he has for your life. His timing makes that possible. You see, God's timing is sacred because it is intimately tied to his will and his plan for your life. Every detail is orchestrated perfectly. Every delay has a purpose. Every challenge is shaping you. When you trust in God's timing, you are acknowledging that he knows best. Even if it doesn't make sense to you in the moment, trust that he is working things out in a way that is far better than what you could have planned on your own. In today's world, sharing has become second nature. From social media posts to casual conversations, we live in a time where people are sadly revealing parts of their lives. Everyone seems to be in a race to share their most intimate moments, their successes and their struggles, believing that the more we share, the more we connect. But here's the truth. There is a danger in oversharing, a danger that can derail the very blessings we are striving to protect. When God blesses you, he does so with great care and precision. That blessing is sacred, and just as a seed needs protection before it grows into a tree, so does your blessing need to be carefully guarded. The act of oversharing, while it may seem harmless, can expose your blessing to harm. Not everyone around you has the capacity to understand or appreciate what God is doing in your life. In fact, some people might even try to diminish your blessing, belittle your success, or turn your joy into jealousy. Not everyone is happy for your success. In fact, some people may be waiting for you to fail. When you overshare, you open yourself up to unnecessary judgment, ridicule, and envy. The more you talk about what God is doing in your life, the more you give others the opportunity to speak negatively, to criticize, or to question your motives. People can become so focused on what you have that they forget to focus on how you got it. They don't see the years of struggle, the prayers, the sacrifices, and the faith that went into that blessing. They only see the surface, what you're showing them, and sometimes it's not enough for them to truly appreciate the depth of your journey. When you overshare, you also risk losing the authenticity of the moment. There's something sacred about a blessing that is kept close to your heart, something that is between you and God. When you constantly broadcast your blessings, you start to shift the focus from God's glory to your own. Instead of appreciating the blessing as a gift from God, you begin to seek the approval of others. You seek validation, applause, and recognition. The more you talk, the more you begin to rely on the opinions of others instead of relying on God. Oversharing also invites unnecessary pressure into your life. When you tell people about your plans, your goals, and your dreams, they form expectations. People will have opinions about your path, your decisions, and the way you choose to live your life. Those opinions, whether they are positive or negative, create a weight that you were never meant to carry. God didn't call you to live according to the expectations of others. He called you to live according to His will. The more you overshare, the more you risk being influenced by the desires, opinions, and judgments of others, which can pull you away from God's original purpose for your life. Moreover, oversharing can make you vulnerable. The more you talk, the more information you give people, and with that information comes the opportunity for others to use it against you. People can twist your words, manipulate situations, and use your openness to undermine you. Your vulnerability is no longer in your control. What you meant as a moment of joy or victory can quickly turn into ammunition for gossip, slander, and even betrayal. The more you open your mouth, the more you give others the ability to shape the narrative, to twist the story, or to break your peace. In addition to this, oversharing can lead to spiritual distraction. When you're constantly talking about what God is doing in your life, it becomes easy to lose sight of what truly matters. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of sharing your success and forget to stay humble, forget to reflect on the true purpose behind the blessing. Instead of thanking God in silence and acknowledging the blessing with gratitude, you can begin to think of the blessing as something to flaunt rather than something to steward. The more you talk, the more you risk losing sight of the sacredness of your blessing and turning it into something superficial, something to be shown off rather than something to be cherished. And then there's the reality of distraction. Sometimes when we overshare, we are just sharing blessings. We are distracting ourselves from the work that still needs to be done. We can get so caught up in the validation that comes from sharing our blessings that we forget there is still work ahead. God hasn't called you to share everything with everyone. He's called you to continue growing, continue maturing, continue trusting. When you overshare, you risk distracting yourself from the next step in the journey, the next phase of your blessing, because you've already spent too much time talking about the one you're in. The danger of oversharing is not just about exposing yourself to others, it's about exposing your heart, your purpose, and your relationship with God to unnecessary risks. Your blessing is too precious to be handled carelessly. There are seasons where the best thing you can do is be quiet, to protect the blessing that God has given you, to hold it in your heart with reverence, and then to wait for the right time to share. Not everything needs to be shared right away. Some things are too sacred, too personal, and too important to be handed over to the public eye privately. Guard your peace, guard your blessing, and guard your heart by learning the power of restraint and the wisdom of keeping certain things between you and God. In a world that is filled with noise, distractions, and constant information, it's easy to overlook the subtle ways in which God communicates with us. We expect dramatic signs, thunderous voices, or clear, unmistakable messages when we're about to face danger or a pivotal moment in our lives. However, the truth is that warnings from God are often silent. They come not as loud shouts or overwhelming visions, but as quiet whispers of the nudges of the Spirit and moments of inner stillness. God doesn't always shout when He's trying to protect you from harm or guide you away from a dangerous path. His warnings are often wrapped in silence, meant to be felt in the quiet moments of reflection or sensed in the stillness of the heart. When we're busy running through life, constantly talking, moving, and seeking the next big thing, it becomes incredibly easy to miss the soft nudges and gentle reminders that God gives us. The reason why many of us fail to heed God's warnings is because we are looking for something loud, something dramatic, when in fact God's voice is most often found in the quiet. Think about how a mother warns her child not by yelling, but by gently holding their hand or giving them a look. This look speaks volumes, but if the child is too distracted or too loud, they miss it. Similarly, when God is trying to guide us, He often does so through small, almost imperceptible moments that require us to slow down and listen. We must learn to cultivate stillness in our own hearts to recognize these warnings, because God is not going to force His guidance upon us. He gives us the freedom to choose, but with that freedom comes the responsibility to be alert to the quiet warnings He provides. Sometimes God's warning comes in the form of a deep, unexplained feeling of unease. You might not have all the logical reasons to feel anxious or hesitant, but your spirit feels restless as though something is off. This is often God's way of saying, wait, something is not right here. The problem is when we're not paying attention, when we're caught up in the noise of our own plans and desires, we can dismiss these feelings as simply paranoia or doubt. We might push through them, ignoring that still voice inside of us thinking we know better. But that unease is often God's way of protecting us from decisions, situations, or people that might bring harm. In addition to feelings of unease, God's warnings can be found in moments of peace. Paradoxically, silence and peace can be as revealing as a storm. There are times when amidst the chaos of our lives, God provides moments of stillness, asking us to pause and reflect. We may feel like we need to rush forward with our plans, our goals, or our ambitions, but in those quiet moments, God is trying to tell us to wait, to listen before proceeding. When you feel the call to pause, it is not always a sign of weakness or indecision. It is a divine invitation to hear God's voice more clearly. At times, God's warning may even come in the form of a closed door or an unexpected detour. We live in a society that values speed, efficiency, and constant progress, so when we encounter resistance, we often view it as a setback. But God's silence in the face of our plans can be a warning in itself. When things don't go as planned, when doors close, or when paths seem blocked, instead of rushing forward with frustration, we should ask ourselves if God is trying to redirect us. Sometimes a delay is not a denial, but a divine intervention meant to protect us from a path we were never meant to take. The challenge in discerning these silent warnings is that they don't always make sense right away. We're so conditioned to seek out certainty and clarity in our decision making that God's subtle guidance can be misinterpreted, decision or doubt. But that's where faith comes in. Faith means trusting in God's wisdom even when we don't fully understand His ways. It means being willing to follow the quiet, unseen paths He lays before us, even when it feels uncomfortable or unclear. The more we mature in our relationship with God, the more we begin to recognize that His silence is not absence. There's a deep purpose in it. God is never truly silent. He is simply waiting for us to tune into His frequency. In the quietness of our souls, He is working to shape our hearts, to give us clarity, and to refine our understanding of His will. But in order to hear Him, we must learn to tune out the distractions of the world around us. It's in the silence that we often hear the most profound instructions for our lives. God's silent warnings are also an invitation to trust Him more deeply. When He speaks quietly, He's asking us to lean into His presence and to trust that His way is better than our own. It requires us to surrender our need for control and to accept that sometimes not knowing everything is exactly what we need. The stillness that God provides allows us to step out of the rush of life, to regain our perspective, and to listen with more than just our ears. In a society that constantly demands our attention, God's warnings might not always sound the way we expect. They may not come with flashing lights or loud alarms, but they are just as real. It's up to us to slow down, listen, and discern the voice of God in the silence. We must remember that sometimes the greatest warnings come in the form of a whisper, a subtle feeling, a closed door, or a moment of peace. If we can learn to tune into these subtle signs, we will find that God is always with us, guiding us in ways that we might not have expected, but that are always for our good. Humility is one of the most powerful forces in the world, though often misunderstood. In a society that celebrates individualism, success, and self-promotion, humility can seem like a weakness. It is sometimes mistaken for being passive, submissive, or even invisible. Yet humility is the strength that lies beneath the surface, the quiet force that can shift mountains, open doors, and change the course of our lives in ways we cannot even imagine. Humility is not about self-deprecation or thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less. It's about recognizing that everything you have, every gift, every blessing, and every opportunity is not solely the result of your own effort, but is given to you by a higher power. It's the acknowledgement that despite your talents, skills, and achievements, you are not the ultimate source of your success. God is. Humility allows you to accept that you are part of a much greater story, a story where you are a vessel through which God's power flows. One of the most powerful aspects of humility is its ability to bring us closer to God. In our pride, we think we have it all figured out, that we are in control of our lives. But in reality, pride leads us to self-reliance, which can pull us away from the very source of our strength. Humility, on the other hand, opens us up to divine intervention, guidance, and blessing. When we acknowledge our limitations and recognize that we are nothing without, we invite His presence into our lives in a deeper, more profound way. God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. This is not just a command, it is a law of the universe. When we humble ourselves, we align ourselves with God's will and open the door for His grace to flow into our lives. Humility also has the power to bring healing. Pride is often the root of conflict and division, both in our personal relationships and in the world at large. When we are proud, we think we are always right. We hold on to grudges and we refuse to apologize or forgive. But humility allows us to recognize our faults, our weaknesses, and our mistakes. It gives us the strength to admit when we're wrong, to ask for forgiveness, and to extend grace to others. When we practice humility, we break down the walls of pride that separate us from each other and create an environment where healing can take place. In relationships, humility has the power to transform not only the way we relate to others, but also the way we see others. Pride causes us to look down on others, to compare ourselves to them, and to feel superior. But humility allows us to see others as equals, to recognize their value, and to appreciate their unique gifts and strengths. Humility creates a sense of unity, a shared understanding that we are all part of a greater whole. It allows us to serve others selflessly, to lift them up without seeking anything in return, and to love them as they are without judgment or expectation. The power of humility is also seen in leadership. In a world that often equates leadership with power, authority, and control, true leadership is rooted in humility. Great leaders are not those who demand respect, but those who earn it through their humility. They don't place themselves above others. Instead, they serve others, listen to them, value their input. Jesus Himself, the greatest leader to ever walk this earth, demonstrated humility by washing the feet of His disciples. He didn't live by force or by position, but by example. He showed that the greatest among us are those who are willing to serve, to put others first, and to lead with compassion and empathy. Humility also enables us to grow. When we are humble, we are open to learning. We are aware that we do not know everything and that there is always room for growth and improvement. Pride makes us blind to our flaws, our mistakes, and our areas of weakness, but humility invites us to examine ourselves, to listen to feedback, and to learn from our experiences. Humility is the key to growth because it allows us to admit that we are not perfect and that we need God's guidance and the wisdom of others to become better versions of ourselves. Humble people are teachable, flexible, and willing to change, whereas proud people are set in their ways and often resist growth. Another powerful aspect of humility is its ability to create peace. Pride is the root of many of the conflicts we face in life, both internally and externally. When we are prideful, we are driven by ego, by the desire to prove ourselves to be right, to have the last word. This often leads to arguments, misunderstandings, and broken relationships. But humility shifts the focus away from our own desires and ego and towards others. When we humble ourselves, we become more patient, more understanding, more compassionate. Humility brings us peace because it helps us to let go of our need to control situations and to be in charge. It allows us to approach life with a sense of calm, knowing that we do not need to fight for our own significance. Our worth is found in God, not in our accomplishments. Humility also enables us to persevere in difficult times. When we are humble, we accept that life is not always easy, and we trust that God has a purpose in every trial we face. Pride causes us to resist adversity, to feel entitled to an easy, comfortable life. But humility allows us to endure hardship with grace and resilience. It helps us to trust that God is working behind the scenes, that He is refining our character, and that He is using our struggles for our good. Humble people don't crumble under pressure. They trust in God's timing and His provision, knowing that He is in control. At its core, humility is a recognition of God's sovereignty. When we are humble, we acknowledge that we are not the masters of our fate, but servants of the one who holds our destiny in His hands. Humility allows us to step aside, to surrender our will, and to make room for God's plan. It is the foundation of a life that is fully surrendered to God, and it is through this surrender that we find true strength, true peace, and true purpose. Humility is not weakness, it is the greatest strength, because it is through humility that God's power is made perfect in our lives. In conclusion, humility is not a mere trait or quality, it is the very essence of strength that flows from surrender. It is the recognition that our worth, success, and purpose are not of our own making, but are given us by a higher power. In a world that often values self-promotion and personal gain, humility stands as a quiet force, empowering us to serve others, heal relationships, grow in wisdom, and walk in alignment with God's will. It is through humility that we open ourselves to divine grace, understanding, and the peace that surpasses all understanding. As we embrace the power of humility, invite God to work through us in ways that not only transform our lives, but also the lives of those around us. Humility is not a sign of weakness, but a declaration of strength that comes from trusting in God's plan, serving others, and walking in the path He has set before us. May we all learn to humble ourselves before God, for it is in that humility that we find true power, purpose, and peace.